Welcome to Curito Connects. I'm your host, Jenn, and I've been conversing with friends around the world about life challenges and impactful moments. Conversations on this platform look at answering the questions, how we overcome challenges and how our experiences shape who we are and the work we do today. I hope this work can inspire you on your own personal and individual journey. Let's dive right in. Hello, my guest today is Bali-based serial entrepreneur Rachel Fearnley of the Whole Health Project, Manifestation, Wealth, and Abundance Coach. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Jen. So nice to be here.
Very excited to have you. So before I start, I just have to thank Rachel for when you first started your first business, Pineapple House Bali, which is temporarily closed right now due to the pandemic. But personally, I often talk about Pineapple House as the start to my own Eat, Pray, Love journey and how it was just an amazing place to spend time at, reflect, and grow from. And all the wonderful people I met during my stay there who till this day are still my friends. And, they come from all over the world. So it's just such a magical place. I never got to meet Rachel during my time when I stayed there. I think I went there twice or three times. I stayed at the Pineapple House, and she was either traveling or off venturing somewhere at the time. But I finally met her in 2019 when I attended her yin yoga training that she co-taught with Jody Vassallo. And since then, I have continued to watch Rachel grow personally, but also professionally. Now as an abundance coach and mentor and founder of the Whole Health Project with her partner, Lucy Foster Perkins, who I hope to invite her as well as a guest on this podcast. So Rachel is a single parent to 3-year-old Yemaja, and she is such a go-getter, force of inspiration, and a friend. So I will leave you with that and let Rachel take the mic here to share with us why choosing to be a single parent in a foreign country when she learned that she was pregnant with her daughter 3 years ago was one of the biggest life-changing experiences she had to go through.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for that introduction. And yeah, I mean, it is just so funny, isn't it, that you came so many times to the Pineapple House and I felt like I knew you, even though we'd never met. And then we did finally get to meet in person, which is so cool, which is so good. So thank you for that. So yeah, oh my goodness, my journey into parenthood was, not such a typical one, although undoubtedly there's people listening who perhaps, are solo parents and have had, slightly alternative routes into parenthood. But for me, so as you touched on, I was living here in Bali, which now has been my home for 8 years, I think. I lose count, but I think it's around 8 years. And I set up the Pineapple House by myself. So I first came to Bali 8 years ago to work for somebody else. So I was essentially kind of headhunted, and I was shipped over to Bali to run a retreat for somebody else. And that came crashing down quite spectacularly after about 1.5 years, which things often tend to do here if they're not in alignment with you. It's not just a small little blip. It's like this massive, these massive events that go on. Like Bali really shines the light on things that need to change quickly. And so I was left in this position where I had built a really amazing community here. I really loved the lifestyle. I was surfing every day. I was doing yoga every day. I was going to the gym. I really had that ideal tropical lifestyle life. And then it came crashing down momentarily because I lost my job. And I was in this position where I was like, okay, I can either leave and set up somewhere else again. And, bearing in mind, I referred to myself as a serial relocator at that point because I lived in so many different countries. I was like, but I actually really like it here and I've got my community. So I threw caution to the wind, put all the money that I had into setting up this business in a foreign country by myself as a solo female. And it was a rip-roaring success, which was amazing. And I get to connect with people like you and so many other people who are just amazing who came to stay. So I ran the Pineapple House by myself for, I'm just kind of pulling numbers out here. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was maybe 3 or 4 years that I was running it by myself. And as I said, just literally living like the most ideal tropical surf life. I made good money. It was a totally more than enough for me to just have this great lifestyle, to travel, blah, 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 so on. And then I got pregnant. And it was a surprise pregnancy. Like, it was a total surprise pregnancy. It wasn't one that was consciously planned. I wasn't with the father of my daughter. We'd just been dating super briefly. I fell pregnant. And it was life changing, as any pregnancy is, even if you're in a relationship. But for me, I was like, wow, okay. It became very evident very quickly that I was going to be walking this path as a solo parent, that the daughter, so the father of my daughter, wasn't going to be involved. He now is, since a year. That's a kind of a story for another day, I think. He is now back sort of in her life and mine. But for the first, for the whole of pregnancy and up until 1 year ago, I was very, very much solo parenting. And I found myself in this position where I was in this foreign country, Indonesia, Bali, which is wildly supportive. I mean, it's such a beautiful place. The people here are amazing, and I had this great business. But I was going through this, one of the biggest life changes that a woman can go through. And I was going from leading this, quite honestly, I know I don't mean it in a bad way, but a very selfish existence, right? I was very much just like, oh my goodness, I get to wake up when I want. I get to go surfing when I want. I've got a team that are helping me run my business, so I can kind of drop in and out, and I can go on surf trips, and then suddenly, like,
it was like that perfect Instagram lifestyle that we're swiping through and looking at. Wow, look at her. She's like doing it on her own, and she has a business.
yeah.
She's waking up for surfing and doing yoga and living that island life.
Totally, yeah. Like, eating smoothie bowls by the pool, and having like cocktails at the beach, or coconuts at sunset. And yeah, it was so, so, so beautifully, amazingly typical of
Right.
like the beautiful lifestyle that you can have out here. And so I got pregnant, and I realized quite quickly that I was going to go through with the pregnancy. Be
Did you
that,
always, sorry, did you always think that down the line you wanted a family?
I was kind of on the fence for a long time, in my adult years, because I mean, prior to this part of my journey, when I say this part, I mean being a yoga teacher, being a coach, all that stuff. I sailed and raced professionally on yachts for 10 years. So the whole of my 20s, I was traveling around the world on boats. So children didn't even. It wasn't even a conversation in my mind at that point, because I had this very alternative lifestyle. So moving ashore, i.e., setting up a bricks and mortar business in one country, was actually very
It's a
me.
big
It was a big step, and it was me becoming more normal and having more of a normal lifestyle to living on a boat and sailing around the world for 10 years. So kids were just, I was on the fence. I was very much on the fence. I adored travel. I still do. I loved adventuring. I loved doing just different, wild, weird, wonderful things. But I guess as I got into my 30s, I was like, well, maybe kids will appear. And I had some female friends who were a bit older than me, who were sort of getting on for 40, who were childless, who were having that moment, which I think a lot of women, as we get close to 40, right, we're like, oh my goodness, like, should I be doing that? So I was very aware that that's what happens often to women when they get towards their 40s. So I was open to it. Let's just say, like, I was open to it happening. I was open to it not happening. I was open to all the things. And so I think I was 35 when I got pregnant. I'm now nearly 40. I'm 40 next month, as of this being recorded anyway. In, where are we now? August 2021. And yeah, I was like, do you know what? It didn't come as a wild surprise to me that I would have a journey into motherhood that would be unconventional, because most of my life has been what one would classically see as being unconventional. So many of my friends were like, of course it's happened to you this way. Like, of course this is how you're doing it.
Not a surprise.
It wasn't. So it was a surprise, but it was totally not a surprise. um, So, I made the decision I was going to go through the pregnancy. It became very, very clear very quickly that my daughter's father was not going to be anywhere close to being on the scene for at least a little while. So then I was faced with this no, not decision, because I'd already made the decision, but this path
Yeah.
that I was like, wow, okay, I'm in a foreign country, but it's a country that I love and adore and I feel very supported in. I don't have my family close by. My family are not wildly hands-on anyway. So I was like, well, I don't have that kind of network. I've got a great circle of friends, but we're all very independent, like based hardly any of my friends here have got kids. I was like, wow, this is going to be different. This is going to be really different. But I knew that I was in the right place. Like, I physically knew I was in the right place because, for any of you that have ever been to Bali in particular, I know in sort of other parts of Indonesia are similar, but Bali, I think, really is particularly special. Is the locals have such an affiliation for children. I've never been anywhere yet in my life where people love children more than they do in Bali. You walk into a cafe and they, especially if you've got a young baby or young child, they whisk your child off instantly, and you'll find them in a corner 20 minutes later with all the staff cooing over your child. It's phenomenal because basically in the Hindu tradition here, they see very, very young babies, children, and very, very old people as being the closest incarnation to spirit that that they can physically, tangibly like touch. So babies and old people are really revered here and really, really held in such kind of high regard that having a child here has just been phenomenal. So I knew from that perspective that it would be a good place to bring up a child. But having a business that I ran by myself with an amazing team, but nonetheless, I didn't have a business partner at that point. And juggling pregnancy, juggling childbirth, like juggling becoming a mom, where I didn't have this infrastructure around me, like grandparents and aunts and uncles and other friends who had kids and toddler groups and baby groups. There wasn't really a lot of that. So where I really had to dig in, and I've talked quite a lot about this sort of in some of my kind of posts on social media, is I had to really dig into this old identity of being a lone wolf and start to shift it, because I'd done so much so alternatively, and I'd really just followed my own heart and done things really quite lone wolfy, right? Just going off sailing on boats and setting up my own business in Indonesia. And, my friends were like, oh my God, what are you doing now? So although I had a lot of friends, and it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I don't have friends, I realized that I had been so fiercely independent that I wasn't sure what my support network would look like, right? It was like, are they still gonna stick by me in this? Like, is this part of their big plan as well to have friends with kids? Or will this change the dynamic of our friendships? Like, how is this going to work, just with my business, right? Like being a solo mom and having to navigate the things that I had no idea. I had no idea what was going to present. I had no idea how my pregnancy was going to go. I had no idea how the birth was going to go. I had no idea how it was going to look postpartum.
Was that scary for you at that time? Like, when you were in that moment and when you had that conversation with her father and he was like, I'm not going to get involved. It's kind of like up to you. You want to keep this baby or not? And and having to, like you said, go through that whole reshuffling and mindset
Mm.
change and understanding yourself and sense of fear, because previously it was more like, I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna go on the boat
Mm.
for 10 years, I'm gonna move to Bali and I don't know the language and start a business, and that it's complete 180 shift.
Yeah. It's funny. I wouldn't say fear so much came into it. Um, there's so many different, so it's kind of funny just talking about like the different stages. So for example, finding out I was pregnant and letting my daughter's father know, and that connection disintegrating quite quickly after. And of course, there's moments where, it was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? But ultimately, because I am such a reflective person in terms of, this has happened for a reason. This has happened for a reason. Maybe I don't know what the reason is right now, but this has happened for any reason. Like I trust in the powers that be. So just as an example, when the sort of connection between myself and my daughter's father disintegrated, it was actually a relief ultimately, because there was like a real negative kind of dissonance between us. And I was like, I don't want this in my pregnancy. I don't want this, like, oh, awkwardness, weirdness, like, what are you doing? What's your role? Why aren't you showing up the way that I want you to show up? All those kind of things, right? And so finally, when it did disintegrate, I was like, cool, okay, right, I can move on now. He's out the picture for now. I can move on, and I can actually move forward in a way that I want to move forward. So it was really step by step. And thank God pregnancies are 9 months, right? Because I needed 9 months. I think every mother can kind of attest to that, right? You need 9 months to figure this shit out, right? And so, I spent that time like talking to my friends and building that community around me, and really learning to ask for help. That didn't come easy for me at all, right? Being vulnerable and being like, hey, I think I'm going to need some support here. Like, I think I'm going to need some help. Like, asking one of my best friends to come to all the scans with me, figuring out who was going to be present at the birth, right? Because again, like normally it would be, of course, the father. So just letting go of, although I didn't have, like I say, a very traditional approach to life, period, there's obviously those things that often we just take for granted, like, oh, of course, if I ever give birth, of course the father will be there. And so, just having to like dismantle those constructs that really, to be honest, society has, put in our minds. That was kind of, it's humbling, and there's some grief there, right? There's some grief around, yeah, okay, I had an amazing birth and I birthed this beautiful child. But there's grief that, of course, like the father wasn't there, or the father figure wasn't there, or my king wasn't beside me in that. And then that's always going to be there, that kind of element of grief. Um, but yeah, I mean, in terms of fear, not a lot of fear. I
Mm.
was just so I was just so confident that this child arrived in the way that she arrived, which was very, very, very quickly, and just how easeful the pregnancy was, how relatively speaking easeful the birth was. So it was just this, like, yeah, I know that we've got each other. Like, I know that she's got me. I know that she knows that I'm a solo parent. And so she's just like, okay, mom, like, we've got this. I'm going to support you. You're going to support me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm.
Wow. And so now she's 3 now, right?
She's
This
3.5
She's
now.
3.5. Yeah, wow. And this must have been such a fun experience thus far, the early years of,
Yeah. I mean, it's been so, so, so beautiful. And as I sort of touched on at the beginning, being here, like being in Bali, one of the reasons I'm here, one of the many, many reasons that I've continued to stay here is because of the support that I can get here. We have 3 ladies that help us at home. So who do like a mixture of cooking or cleaning or nannying. And, they're amazing, right? I mean, obviously the cost of living here is lower. So, in the UK currently, like if I was in the UK, I wouldn't be able to have 3 people in my home, like helping us with, with like
you
the
have
cooking.
a very different lifestyle.
Very, very different lifestyle. So that's one of the benefits of being here. But also, aside from just the financial side, which is, kind of in some ways just quite surface, is that, these women are like second mums to my daughter. I mean, we joke about how she's got about 5 mums, because of sort of, one of my closest, or Lucy, my business partner, who's also her godmother, and then the 3 ladies that help me at home, who, my daughter goes and stays with them in their village. Like they take her to the village, they take her like to see their parents and their families. And so, she's growing up in this beautiful, beautiful way where she's got this real mix. She's actually really seeing the proper Balinese life.
Yeah, and she's fluent in Bahasa now.
She understands a lot of Bahasa. Yeah. She doesn't speak so much of it just yet, but I know that'll come. I feel like it's storing up inside her and then she'll just start like spitting out sentences. But she's also learning Balinese as well, which is like the ancient language from here, which is a really, rare language.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you had mentioned earlier in this conversation about when you had to make that switch of, being a solo businesswoman and then kind of rethinking, now that you're going to bring this child into the world, how are you going to balance that? And how are you
Mm,
shifting your focus career-wise to support your lifestyle and to support your lifestyle
yeah,
with your daughter? So could you kind of cover that a little bit maybe and
yeah,
share with us that
totally.
transition and how you made that decision of partnering with Lucy, and then obviously we hit COVID and that went another flop, right? So
Mhm.
things one year after another and we're still going.
Yeah. Oh, it's been huge for everybody, hasn't it? But it's been such an interesting transition or set of transitions to reflect back on. So whilst I was running the Pineapple House by myself, and prior to getting pregnant, and then obviously during the pregnancy and postpartum until Lucy came on board, which I was about 2 years ago. So when my daughter was just over one, and the business was going amazingly. Like I said, like it was really growing and expanding, and it was just beautiful, a beautiful business to have. But one of the challenges here was the volcanoes and the earthquakes, which we kind of I learned that I ended up having to account for at least a month a year of lost revenue through natural disaster, because maybe not necessarily that the airports were shut, but people would get a lot of fear of coming here because, oh my god, there's been a massive earthquake, or the volcanoes are going off and what have you. So that it was okay to navigate, but it was definitely something that once I got pregnant, I was like, wow, it's not just me now. It's not just me where, previously I was like, well, if shit really goes down here and it's really hard to run a business, I'll just go somewhere else, because that's kind of what I've always done. It's just like, oh, well, this is kind of come to the end of its course. No problem. Pack my bags and get on a plane and off you go. But this time I was like, oh, it's just not going to be quite as easy to do that with a little kid in tow. And also, I, as much as I love travel and I love adventure, and that, hoping that the world goes back to some kind of normality with regard to travel, I will definitely impart that on my child. But I definitely do also believe it's really important for children to have stability for the good first few years of their life, so they're not like being shipped around the world from pillar to post. So during that process, I was like, okay, well, I definitely need to just start thinking a little bit more outside of just lifestyle living and just having this cool business that supports myself, and it's just growing organically, and I'm not really putting too much energy and effort into it, because I was like, yeah, because what happens if there's a bigger volcano or a bigger earthquake or something actually really does impact the island long term, which little did we know it was actually going to be a pandemic.
And not just the island, the whole world.
The whole world, yeah. And so that was, I'm really fortunate that that was my thinking, a few years back, because it got me outside of my little bubble of, the Pineapple House and Canggu and going to yoga and surfing and eating in cafes, and having nice time with friends. Um, so that's when I started to put my attention more on my teaching and my coaching. So I started to just very slowly, because, again, I was running a retreat business. I had a newborn baby, and I was starting to build my coaching business online. So I was like, okay, this is going to be a slow burn, but I'm just going to start to diversify, because at the end of the day, diversification in business is one of the most important things that you can do, right? It's as we are learning, because things come up that we just can never even imagine would come up. So I started to do that. I was sort of holding a baby in one hand and the Pineapple House in another hand, and coaching business in a third hand that I found from somewhere, and I was getting kind of tired. is is an understatement. Those of you that have gone through just the early years, it's exhausting. Like, it's really exhausting, especially when, although I had women that helped me at home, I didn't have people helping me at nighttime. So, it was just me, that was doing all the nighttime stuff with my baby. Um, and then as I started to kind of build my coaching and my teaching business and juggling these things, I was like, I love the Pineapple House. I don't want to let go of it, but it's not really where I want to continue to put my effort and energy, because I just had a sense, like, whether it was just because of my daughter or whether there was a sense of something bigger happening in the future, like the pandemic. I was like, I just know that I need to focus my energy in this place. But so I was kind of in a bit of a dilemma. I was like, oh, what do I do? Do I sell? Do I don't know, find someone to go into business with? And, there's all these things coming up. And then Lucy, who's one of my closest friends, we had met here a number of years back, and she'd actually been my first guest at the Pineapple House. She came for like 5 days and stayed for 6 weeks or something like that, and then ended up staying long term in Bali until she met a guy and fell in love and emigrated, or almost emigrated, to Australia. So she was over there whilst I was going through the whole pregnancy and childbirth thing. And then her relationship started to disintegrate. And she ended up coming back to Bali, have that relationship having finished. And I'd actually been saying to friends in the run up to that, I was like, you know what? The only person I'd go into business with is Lucy. But I had no idea if she wanted that. And obviously, I didn't want to lay that on her having just gone through quite a traumatic breakup and having to like leave a country and start all over again. So she came to my house, and I just let her stay and just cry and heal and grieve and all those things for a few weeks. And then after a few weeks, she started to kind of get a bit more energy and start to like look to the future and be like, okay, like, what's next. And I started to notice a few other entrepreneurs and people she knew expressing interest in her as a potential business partner. Yeah, I could see it as like, I sort of say I could see these people like sniffing around her. And I was like, oh my God, like, what if somebody offers her something before me? So we kind of joke about it. Like, I kind of proverbially like popped the question to her and was like, will you go into business with me? So she was just an instant like, hell yes. So she came into partnership with me, the Pineapple House, and the basically the kind of deal is that she would kind of take over the running of the Pineapple House so that I could then focus more energy online and with the coaching, which also ended up being a total blessing in disguise as well, because she really successfully helped to grow and expand the Pineapple House over, I think it was like a year that we had before the pandemic hit. So, and it was a shame because we were just getting into this really good point where we were just starting to like do retreats in Portugal and looking at other locations around the world. But that's that is what it is. It's what happened. But I had, in the meantime, I say, been focusing my work online and looking at different ways of like working and courses or coaching programs and so on. And so then when the pandemic came and everything closed down, and obviously we're a retreat company, we're fully tourism based. Like, we just had to shut our doors, and we rented our property out just to whoever wanted to stay there, but it was never going to make us money. I mean, it was just slightly stemming the hemorrhage of cash. And I had already set up a Facebook group called the Whole Health Project, where it was just kind of a Facebook group that was a bit of a kind of community group, a bit of a lead generation for me in the work that I was doing, particularly around health coaching at the time. And, I had about 700-800 people in the group. And then I suddenly had this idea. I was like, Lucy, why don't we like both take over this group and really grow it as a community group where we invite practitioners in to like offer donation-based or free classes so people can just come. And because obviously everybody was going on Zoom, right? All the yoga teachers were going on Zoom, everybody. So we kind of followed suit, and we started to grow this group. We started to bring practitioners in from all over the world. And then I also had launched previously a sort of a short breath course for people just to learn about their breath, not a certification course. And then just one day I was like, oh my God, let's create a training, like an actual training where people can learn how to teach the breath. So not dynamic practices, but just literally teach people about the breath, teach people about like the functions and the dysfunctions of the breath, teach people about what happens when you breathe well versus when you don't breathe well. And we put together this course. We both thought it was an amazing idea, and we put together this course in 3 weeks from inception of idea to actually like literally going live with the first class. And I think in total in that first round we had about 90
That's
people sign
amazing.
up. So it was such beautiful timing. It was such synchronicity. It was such just, the right people, the right place, the right time. And that's really how the whole health project got launched, right? We started off with the Facebook group, and then we just whipped this training, almost out of thin air. And that's really what helped us through this whole pandemic, right? Because a tourist-based business just completely sort of folded on itself. So we did one of the quickest pivots that we know.
So if you could just share with us a little bit more about the whole health project, your, shaping your coaching
Mm,
career. I guess we can kind of pivot in there. And also just what you've seen in this last almost 2 years now
mm,
in the virtual world of these practitioners and client as well, right? People seeking
mm.
this. And it's like basically the world is flat again because the internet, you can be connecting with people from around the world as long as you have internet, a computer, and good
Yeah,
Wi-Fi.
totally. Yeah, I mean, just thank goodness that we have, the power of the internet. But then, we could also say that the power of the internet is what also drives fear, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword, really. But yeah, so I mean, the whole health project it grew very, very quickly, which we're so grateful for. So we put our breath coach training up. That was our first kind of paid offer, and we've done 4 or 5 launches of that now over the last 18 months. And now we've actually turned it into what you call like an evergreen product. So people can sign up when they want, because we would just have so many people reaching out, just like, oh, when are you offering it next? When are you offering it next? And it's something that the breath and lungs is such a topic, and just health in general is such a big topic now. So it's something that is just not going to get old, because we're never going to stop breathing until we die. So it's something that we see as being so fundamental and so important for literally everybody on the planet. And then, so prior to COVID, we'd also been facilitating yin yoga teacher trainings in person, which is obviously what you came to. And so I was originally co-facilitating with my friend Jody, and then I started co-facilitating with Lucy. And then when the pandemic came, we put that online as well. So we now have our yin teacher training online. We have our breath coach training online, which have just been such pivotal offers for us as business people, but also for the people receiving it. Because two of the big things that people need to do right now is go inside, is connect to their body, connect to their intuition, connect to their own sort of inner sense of stability, and calm down. Right, and really like learn how to relax, learn how to regulate their nervous systems, learn how to be non-reactive. It's so important. So we're just so happy that we've been given the opportunity to put this out into the world in a time and a place where it's been really, really needed. So we did that, and we had such success with that. And obviously, like, I've been in business for years. Lucy, prior to coming to business with me, had a couple of product-based businesses, and she also had online classes and things like that. So we then moved into supporting sort of wellness practitioners, coaches, healers to build their own businesses online. So then we move more into the business coaching realm. So we have a 4-month mastermind where we take people on a pretty big journey from the masculine structural side of business, the strategy, the marketing, all of those things, right through to the energetics, to the mindset, to really embodying what, the person that you need to be in order to have that successful business. So that's really kind of taken us up to now. And I mean, we've got so many more ideas that are brewing. We'll see what actually comes out, but it's really exciting to be able to be in this space where, as you said, like so much is opening up. So many people are now online, which again could be a double-edged sword, right? You can see that as, well, it's already been done. Oh my God, there's already so many coaches. There's already so many healers, or there's already a da 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 coach. There's already a blah 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 teacher. But the other side of that is that, yeah, there is. And so they're showing you what's possible. Like, yeah, they're showing you that there is a market for that. And, with over 7 billion people on the planet, most of whom have the internet, you know, there's a lot of people who are desiring it. And, this is definitely one of the things that the pandemic has also shown us, is the importance of health, right? Is the importance of, well, not only health, but being sovereign, having your own business. Not to say that having your own business is the be all and end all, and that's the only thing that you can do. But I think so many people are waking up to like, oh, hang on a minute. When my whole livelihood is inherently connected to another corporation that could be shut down in a second, or they can decide that you can only work for us if you comply to these rules, or what have you, then we start to realize it's like, oh, hang on a minute, maybe I need to do something that is more sovereign, that is more autonomous. And that's something that I feel so strongly about, is supporting wellness entrepreneurs, supporting women, supporting people who typically perhaps wouldn't think that they had what it takes to have a business, or to put themselves online, or to be in front of stacks of people talking about what they do, right?
Yeah. Well, we're kind of coming down to the last few more minutes of our conversation here. But before we, go into the wrap up section, I did want to ask. So you had mentioned that Yemaja's dad's back in the
Mm-hmm.
picture in your lives, but that you're still solo
Yes.
parenting, right? So he is
Yeah.
present, but not right fully involved. So you also had to kind of figure out how to make that
Yeah.
happen, right?
Yes, very much so. Yes. So in a nutshell, um, we went our separate ways, not out of anger or any big massive fallout, but it wasn't going to be a supportive connection when I was pregnant. So I made the decision. I was like, you know, I'm doing this by myself, and you can go off and do you. And then I reached out to him just over a year ago, which I always knew I would reach out to him, because in my view, and everybody has their own experience, obviously, through these different things. So this isn't necessarily like what everybody would think, but I knew that I didn't want to be the one that was causing a wedge in my daughter and her father's relationship. I was like, if anybody's going to cause a wedge, it's going to be him, not me. So, I just had a calling to reach out to him about a year ago, and I did, and it actually turned out he was still on the island. I had no idea. I really genuinely had no idea where in the world he would be. He'd only been about 30 minutes down the road from us pretty much the whole time. I know, it's amazing. And he was really happy. He'd actually been wanting to reconnect. Weirdly enough, he'd actually sent me a couple of messages a few months before, and they literally didn't arrive. Like, he showed me them, that he had sent them, and they never arrived in my inbox, which is quite amazing. So we reconnected, and we've over the last year just been figuring out what co-parenting looks like what our sort of relationship is in terms of friendship, and how we can sort of be cohesive as a sort of unconventional family unit. So it's really well. So my daughter stays with him 2 nights a week at the moment. They have a really great relationship. I'm super supportive of their relationship. We hang out together. It's not that kind of awkward, like pass the child at the door and don't talk to each other kind of thing. We get on well. There's obviously ebbs and flows, as with any kind of relationship of any sorts. But it's really beautiful. I'm really glad that my daughter has got her father in her life.
Right. That's beautiful. And that's exciting to see where all this goes forward as
Mm,
well. So, usually I kind of end with asking the speaker to share some wise wisdom to send. I'm going to obviously put all your links so people can follow you and check out the whole health project, visit your website if they want any coaching from you as well. And if you follow Rachel on social media, she is very out there sharing her journey, so you'll be up to date. So I won't go into suggestions on, as a healer in the spiritual wellness space, how to, start a business and make that step. But maybe we can talk more about women who are, where you were 3 years ago
mm,
when they find out that they're pregnant and, whether or not to keep the baby, if they go solo parenting. I think it's more common now than it was before and not so much of a taboo of a
mm,
topic, but still scary and still, life changing, obviously. And that whole journey, like you said, that 9 month period and all the decisions you have to make, because it's no longer just about you. You're also, responsible for someone else. If you knew what you knew now, having gone through all that, what would you have told yourself 3 years ago?
yeah, I mean, in terms of, yeah, I mean, so in terms, firstly, like in terms of like the decision of like, shall I go through with the pregnancy? Shall I not? I mean, for me, I just sat with both options for a few days. Like I sat exclusively with like, what does my life look and feel like if I go through with it? And what does my life look and feel like if I don't? And, basically it was very obvious to me that my path was to go ahead with being a mom, but that's literally how I made my decision. And I'm a very decisive person, so decisions come really easily for me. I know quite quickly, and I'm very sort of convicted in my decisions. And then in terms of like making that step, like if you know that solo parenthood, whether it's by choice or whether it's kind of by sort of accident or by circumstance, is it's honestly it's reaching out to community. Like that's the big one. I've spoken to so many other women who have had a similar path, and the big kind of thing as to whether it's been more joyful and easeful or more stressful and tiring and exhausting has been that was like how able are you to humble yourself and ask for support. But it's also not seeing support or needing support or being supported as weakness, right? And this is the whole thing with the feminine as well. It's just like, oh, the feminine is weak. Oh, the feminine communes, the feminine. We are about community, and there's power in community, and there's power in asking for support. And that has been the thing that has honestly just saved me, because it is so freaking hard. Like parenting is so freaking hard, but I know that because of the sheer volume of support that I receive, I am an infinitely better mother. And I have brought up a child who is so emotionally aware and so embodied and so grounded and so articulate. And that wouldn't have happened anywhere near the extent that it had if I was strung out, stressed out, like exhausted, reactive, and all those things, which, I don't blame mothers for being like that, because it's freaking hard. But there is another way. Like there is another way to reach out for support, and whatever it looks like. Like it doesn't have to look the same for everybody.
Yeah. That's really helpful. I don't have kids myself, but I play with my niece and I see how they have to deal with it. I'm like, I'm so glad I can just come and play and then leave and just, think like, oh my goodness, when you're also still trying to figure
Yeah.
yourself out if you're not quite there yet. But I remember another conversation I had, someone else said, no one prepares you for
Mm-mm.
it. No one, you can't be
No.
prepared,
Yeah.
so you just kind of have to go with it. And it's really testing you as well. So I think that whole journey is part of it as well, in terms of
Totally.
giving birth, having the baby, raising them teaching you, you teaching them.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, like nothing prepares you. And I'm sorry to break it to people, but puppies do not prepare you for babies. Like so many of my kids, I've got a puppy to prepare me for having a baby. I'm like, it's not the same. It's not, nothing. I've had puppies, I've had dogs, and I've had a baby. They're not the same thing, not even remotely. But and you're just never ready. Like you're pretty much never ready. So you
So just embrace it, embrace change.
totally, totally,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thanks so
You're
much for your time,
so
Rachel.
welcome. You're so
I
welcome.
hope people find this conversation helpful if it resonates with them,
For sure.
insightful in other ways.
Yeah. Thank you so much for hosting me. Bye.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to Curito Connects. For more Connects content, collaborations, and discoveries set to inspire you on your own individual journey, please head to our website at www.curito.co. Until next time, stay inspired and thank you for joining us at Curito Connects.